Talk Show. Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we continue and complete our Dr. Phibes retrospective with Dr. Phibes Rises Again, starring Vincent Price. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, creator of the Alex Van Helsing novels. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars and co-creator of the comics Psychom from Tokyopop and Clockworks from Humanoids. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin is Drew Edwards, writer for Rockabilly Online and creator and writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man for Monsterverse Comics. Say hello.
Hello.
Is that the sound of you speaking from behind a mask of your own face?
Yes.
And finally,
which I will do a lot this episode.
And finally, also joining us from Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, according to Wikipedia, Dr. Phibes Rises Again is a 1972 sequel to The Abominable Dr. Phibes. It was directed by Robert Fust and stars Vincent Price as Dr. Anton Phibes. And that's all that Wikipedia has about this. But this is indeed a sequel to Dr. Phibes where he continues his truly wackadoo murders, this time with an end goal in mind and an enemy. So, and his enemy is played by Robert Corey of Count Yorga, and many times seems to be Count Yorga. So let's get our opening thoughts. Let's try to keep it short because I know there's a lot to talk about here, but I want to know your general reaction to Dr. Phibes Rises Again, week to week from the first one. So let's go Julia, Drew, Tony, and then I'll go. So Julia, Dr. Phibes Rises Again.
The first thing that comes to mind is quoting the little dragon from the Baby Einstein video.
Wow, I think that's the first time. I don't know if it's the first time, but it's the first time I've ever heard Baby Einstein on a reference on a horror podcast or something. I just spit out.
Well, you know why? Because my daughter, our youngest daughter, was terrorized by that dragon for years. She had nightmares. So he actually is relevant.
So Baby Einstein is horror to some children, and I'm sure a few parents too. But wow, that's awesome! What a good tie-in. Unexpected.
All right then. Anyway, no, it's kind of just not that good, really. I like a lot of the sets, just like I did in the first movie, because I really enjoy the whole Art Deco thing and the costuming. But, boy, God, there's just a lot of... I mean, I think just it lost me from the moment that Vincent Price's character, Dr. Phibes, plugs in his amp or whatever to his neck so that he can narrate his thoughts that he's saying to himself. Like he's talking to himself, but he has to have the audio.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this is already gone, downhill, and it's been like a minute.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, not that great.
You're right. He's only talking to himself. You're right. That's the first dialogue from a character in a movie, and that's when he's talking to his dead spouse, who obviously can't hear him. So it's just for our.
Well, he did that in the first one, though.
That's absolutely right. That is absolutely correct. Okay. In fact, we're saving Tony. It's Drew is next. Drew, opening thoughts. Dr. Phibes Rises Again.
I do like this movie, but oddly enough, I've never watched the two of them so close together. And I think, this was a rushed production, and I think that's really apparent when you watch the two of them back to back, because there's a lot of thought in the first one, and this is kind of a thoughtless movie. And yeah, the exposition a go-go kind of kills it, because, when Dr. Phibes talks in the first movie, it has such power, but because he's talking so much in this, it just gets repetitious. I like it. There's, as you are often fond of saying, Jason, all I need is a few little things for me to give a movie a pass. And the Phibes character is certainly still a cool character, but I don't like it anywhere nearly as much as the first one.
I'm going to come to regret saying that, because that's absolutely, you're right. I do say that all the time. Like, there's this problem with this movie and this problem with this movie. Yeah. Okay. But normally, yeah, I don't know. You're exactly right. So I have to grapple with whether there was wisdom in that. Tony, opening thoughts.
Oh man. Woe to thee of earth and sea, for the crappy movie people send this movie with wrath. It has a human number, and that number is 2. As in Exorcist 2. Oh man. This is the Exorcist 2 of Phibes movies, except we never get a 3 that redeems it. It just wallows in terrible.
Oh, come on. It's not as bad as The Exorcist 2.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Exorcist 2 did not have a guy getting eaten alive by scorpions.
No, that doesn't matter. It
does matter.
No, it doesn't. And here's why. I have my reasons. That's why we have a debate. This movie is meandering. It is totally unlike the first one, other than he devises some kills. It doesn't have much to do. People are shoehorned in. We get Phibes. Like, we get a known cartoon narrator. Maybe he wasn't known as a cartoon narrator then, but that voice that narrates the beginning.
Who is that? Is that the guy from Rocky and Bullwinkle, or who?
I forgot, and I had to, I should have looked it up again last night. That should have been part of my notes. But when you get that voice, and Dr. Phibes, like, he's narrating like we know that from things like Scooby-Doo and like Batman. Like, will Batman get saved? Like, this is freaking Dr. Phibes. Come on.
What do you call it, Tony? You call it exposition theater.
Exposition, like everything. This movie is so much tell and almost no show. You didn't need to have all of that. We didn't need. Dr. Phibes comes out of he's like, who destroyed my house? Obviously, his house is destroyed. All of that. Oh man, it's just.
I should also point out that at the end of the last movie, he told Volnavia to destroy his house. So it could be that during his long nap.
There's just so much meandering.
And the things that you want to have exposition about, like how the hell is Volnavia still around? What is she?
He just called her like, come on, Volnavia.
Yeah, come on, Volnavia, even though you were destroyed by acid in the last movie.
Once again, let me call upon Volnavia. Now, look, if this movie were a much deeper film than it is, and maybe this is it, then, perhaps Volnavia is a Caliban-like creation. Maybe she's some kind of animate spirit that he has.
Or an android.
There's even been people. I've even seen fan speculation online that he's Victoria and Anton Phibes' daughter, which I find to be a bit of a stretch. But
I kind of agree that they should have taken about an hour or 10 minutes of this hour-and-a-half exposition theater that they did, or however long it felt, and at least maybe they could have put some of that into Volnavia, because Dr. Phibes just won't shut up. He just you're like, he didn't need to. You don't need exposition for most of the things that he talks about. It's like
it does remind me a bit of like when you read, and I read a lot of old comic books, and they would have a character explaining when they're very clearly doing, like, I'm going to punch this guy. And he's like,
exactly. It's so much, the mantra of movies is, show, don't tell. When you have to tell, it's obviously that something's not so great about it.
And I'm not going to defend that stuff about this movie. So on that, I agree with you. They made him talk too much.
So that opening, I just want to point out, that opening where they recap all of the Abominable Dr. Phibes, which is just a few years ago. I remember where they do this because at the time there's no DVRs. There's the only way you catch a movie a couple of years after it's come out is if it's running on the second half of the double billing at the drive-in. But having said all that, this is not necessary. I mean, Brides of Dracula came out in 1960, and it replays the end of. All you really got to know is where did we last leave Dr. Phibes? Brides of Dracula did that by showing clips, but they did it in this like clever little thing, in a little sort of diamond that fills the screen during the credits and just shows you everything that happened before. Superman 2, which came out 10 years after this, also does the same thing. Opening credits, and they play all of the original Superman just to catch you up. There's no reason for this, and Tony's right. It sets the wrong tone right away, because it starts recapping everything that happened and telling
except for why Vanavia is still alive.
But it sets everything that happened.
Well, and also I'll get into that later. Never mind.
And we have, and again, the voice is very similar. Like, for how non-campy, so they decide to not go campy, right? Like, that's obvious. That seems to be an obvious choice. Like, I think, like, the kills are a little bit more mean and kind of a little bit more gruesome. So they start a non-campy movie with this voice that's associated with cartoon and camp.
It's funny you say it's not campy, but my reaction to this was almost because they didn't have the time to really hammer out the script, that they almost play it as a parody of the first movie. Like, that's the way it feels to me.
Well, I think what you're both saying is that the movie is uneven. I mean, that the kills are really dark. Then the stuff with the cops is really sort of...
some of the cops are slapstick.
And you're intended to find the cops hilarious. And I think a lot of the time, I think the movie just grinds to a halt whenever the cops...
We're supposed to find them funny? Because, man...
I have to say, I do find how frustrated they are with Dr. Phibes to be kind of endearing for some reason.
It's a Keystone Cop thing that doesn't gel. It's not funny. They're just kind of stupid.
So
like, nothing works in comedy that's not really funny.
Here's a really quick opening thought, and then I want to go into what this movie is about. All right, I find it very frustrating that I don't like this movie because it's hard to figure out exactly why. It's still good looking, just like the last one was. It's not that the movie drags, because I liked the terror, and the terror drags like crazy. I mean, the terror literally stops time, and you forget where you are. Nosferatu drags, and I love that. It's not that it doesn't make sense, because I've watched The Bourne Identity 9 times. I have no idea what the hell's going on in that movie. I do not have to understand the movie to like it. This movie drags and doesn't make sense. I normally can forgive those things, and yet for some reason, this one left me curiously empty. I don't know what it is. I think maybe it's the unevenness.
I think it's also because the first one is so goddamn good.
Yeah, that's definitely part of my thing. Is how do you make that and then this cheap? It's cheap.
And it's a lot of the same people that they brought back.
Even from the dead. It's got Terry Thomas. Terry Thomas is this well-known, super foppish English dude. When Frankie Avalon did a British accent in his movies to make fun of the British, he always did Terry Thomas, because everybody knows the way this guy talks. He's back. He played a dead doctor in the last one. He plays a dumbass.
He was the guy who he was like the snake woman. He was watching Stag films.
Right. This one, he plays the shipping magnate who has
Well, the rabbi from the first movie is also back as an archaeologist that gets stuffed into a bottle.
That's right. So there's
I just think it's so bizarre to see Peter Cushing in this little cameo role.
Peter Cushing walks on, one presumes as a favor to God knows who. So basically what we can surmise is that there were 12 actors in the commissary at Elstree Studios, and somebody went down there and said, "Yo, Peter, you want to come up and walk around a room for a minute, and we'll, But
I think that Robert Quarry, as you said, Count Yorgos, was really good. I think he was really interesting. But it's funny that all the background stuff about how much they hated each other, or how much Vincent Price hated Robert Quarry.
Yes, and before we get to the personalities there, let me read you guys a quotation about exactly that, because this is the key to the plot of this movie. The plot of this movie is that Vincent Price wants to take his mummified wife to Egypt, where he is looking for some hidden font called the River of Life, that he's already started his preparation. He's apparently been working on this for a while. He's built a bat cave already in Egypt that he can hang out in. And the plot involves, while he was asleep, Robert Quarry broke into his safe and stole some maps. And that starts a sort of Raiders-style race to find this thing. Now, here's this
Which
quotation.
makes even less sense now that you mention it, because he's already built a bat cave. I think maybe when you're to that point, you don't need maps anymore.
But
you're probably pretty familiar with the area.
Yeah,
you know?
he built it years ago before his wife died. So apparently this is like a long thing he's been working on.
And the ending, and we also remember that the nice cartoon narrator tells us that, in fact, the ending of Dr. Phibes, the first one, was so that he would just wait it out to start the second one. Like, that was all a plot to just wait 3 years, I think it was.
It was a timer. It was a sun timer, basically.
Yeah.
He hid himself under the floor, and now on such and such day, the moon's going to set off this little ding 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 little globe in the floor of his underground lair and bring him back.
You know, you talk about the maps and everything. They changed the quote unquote MacGuffin in this movie, because in the first half of the movie it's the papyrus, the maps, and then it becomes the key in the later part of the movie.
Well, okay, right, and we'll get to whether I understood that at all. But let me read you this quotation, and I think it's one that you guys might want to respond to. Okay, so Mark Bourne, I can't remember who he writes for, but he was online and he made this wonderful quote where he said, "One of the problems with Dr. Phibes' Rise Again is that it's built on a bucket load of backstory, including a long-standing opponent of Dr. Phibes that was never brought up in the first movie. So not only are we asked to retrofit all this new material into the story we were given before, but all this new backstory forces us to rethink the abominable Dr. Phibes as being actually the second of a three-part story, the first part of which we'll never see."
Again, we never get the third movie. We get Exorcist 2. We don't get the third one that redeems it, sadly.
Right. But
there were so many ideas for a third Dr. Phibes movie, but that's a whole topic in of itself.
I wish that it happened, because then I could be like, well, you know, again, 2 was uneven, but at least we got 3. Instead, we get this, which I got on a flipper disc, like it's a double feature disc.
Yes.
I know which side will get the most play. I don't think the other side will be flipped that often, that's for sure.
So they bring in Robert Corey. Like, you know, what Bourne is pointing out is that the real crux of this movie, and again, it's uneven, so, you know, who knows, but the movie as we take it insists, look, there are 2 madmen in the world. Operating in London in the 1920s, there are 2 madmen. There's Bieterbeck, or whatever he's called. I'll just call him Robert Corey. There's Robert Corey, who is searching for an eternal elixir because he already enjoys one, apparently, and it's running down. And there's Dr. Phibes, his rival. They're both snooty. They're both evil. They both have their own shtick, although Phibes has way more shtick than you know, Robert Corey does. And
so, frankly, Phibes is a lot better at being evil than Robert Corey.
Yeah, Robert Corey, like in this movie, mostly just tends to be evil towards his wife.
He's evil towards everybody who is.
That's mainly it.
He just seems more like a jerk than outright evil.
I love that. That's the thing, is there's a lot of pieces of this that could have led to a good movie, like a battle amongst supervillains. Awesome. Yes, please give me more of that. Instead, it's like
Corey
a jerk.
Is like Saint Germain. There's no reason he couldn't have been Saint Germain, in fact, because he's immortal. He's connected. He's having dinner with the princess. The thing at the beginning is one of the princesses, and his wife is like, "Hey, listen, the princess isn't going to wait for us. She's, you know, blue blood, don't you know?" And you know, so he's on his way out to. So he's very connected. He wears his tuxedos. You know, he's not hiding like Dr. Phibes. He's in plain sight. People probably don't know that he's an immortal. He has his large. I don't know the ethnicity of the enormous wrestler that is his manservant.
Poor Johnson alike. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. You know, but he speaks to him in whatever language. You know, so he is just like Dr. Phibes, but with different shtick. It's like there's a DC universe that only consists of supervillains in this world.
Well, he's a little kind of a little bit Raj Al Ghul when you think about it.
Yes. Absolutely. You know, and they chose Corey to do that. You know, when you consider this movie was put together quickly, there are a billion ways just as cheap that could have carried it off. I've heard people say they should have had Phibes versus Yorga, but this could have been Phibes versus Yorga. There's no reason this guy needs to be. He could have been Count Yorga.
Yeah, with a little bit of tweaking of the script, it would have worked.
He's already 700 years old. he's already an immortal, and the only thing is he's not a vampire. But
well, I mean, he just doesn't have the supervillainness of Yorga. He just comes off as he's more of a jerk.
No.
There's never a point where I was like, oh man, other than the fact he stole the key and stuff like that.
He seems like a CEO of a big corporation, just kind of like greedy a little bit.
Yeah.
Well,
but can I say the thing about how much like Vincent Price hated him? That
yeah. Tell us about that.
That because AIP was starting to replace Vincent Price with Robert Quarry as a major film star, kind of.
Yeah.
And so at one point, Quarry's singing opera, and he says to Price, he's like, "I bet you didn't know I could sing, did you?" And Price responds, and this is a little bit colorful language, so if there's children listening, pause now. Price responds, "Well, I knew you weren't a fucking actor."
Oh, Vincent Price.
Oh, man.
Corey says that he actually got along okay with Price, though. He says that Price was mad because of publicity about AIP wanted to replace Vincent Price as their go-to actor. But Corey, now mind you, Corey lived a long time, so it's possible that he was changing his story. But he says, that stuff was there, but we actually got along well because we worked together in like ripping off the studio and our expense reports and stuff like that. And so
that's awesome. Hey, if you're gonna make this terrible movie, you might as well rip them off for all they have. Because it's cheap, man. I mean, it has some cool costumes and it's cool, and I love like Egypt as a setting. Man, I mean, I go gaga for that stuff.
Some of the sets are okay.
Oof. And, even like the house destruction, it's just this set that looks like something off of Laughing. Like when he comes out and says, "Who destroyed my mansion?" You expect the next thing to be ba-dum-bum-ba-dum-bum.
The rivalry though, or the attempt at a rivalry, and I have to say, I feel like that there is one little exchange between Robert Quarry and Vincent Price in this that actually sums up the Phibes character in like one sentence. Robert Quarry is like, "What kind of fiend are you, Phibes?" And Vincent Price is the kind that wins.
Oh yeah, so that's awesome.
And I love that is the character.
Charlie Sheen thing, winning.
Yeah. That is a wonderful. But Quarry's never given a chance to be magnificent. He has all this opportunity in his background, but there are no moments when, and it's a Phibes movie, okay? So to some extent, we can expect that they just aren't going to give Quarry's character an opportunity to be badass, to actually turn the tables, because he never does. There's never a moment when, like Phibes' most frustrating moment is when Quarry steals the sarcophagus that has the mummified wife of Dr. Phibes.
Oh yeah.
That only takes him like one night to get it back. He's annoyed, but he's never really reversed.
Yeah, see,
Phibes is kind of like an evil Doc Savage though, because he's always 2 steps ahead of everybody, and he has all these skills that come from God knows where.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And and he's been planning for years. Like we say, he built this Batcave, years before his wife died. So obviously he and Biederbeck have been chasing this river of life for a really long time, And I kind of wish that they would just team up about it. By the way, one thing I was reading about this Tony was remarking about the cheapness of the sets. There are certain sets that look pretty good, but it's all so much set. There's a lot of outside stuff that's filmed in Spain because they have some go-to deserts over there. But this is Elstree. This is the same studio where they did Lust for a Vampire and a bunch of other Hammers that we've seen. Late Hammer, basically. The Late Hammer, like Vampire Circus and all that stuff, is done here at Elstree Studios.
This is again why I compared to our Exorcist 2 outing is that I guess it's okay. I mean, I get where Drew is coming from, but by no means is the first Phibes movie on the caliber of Exorcist 1, but let's not forget that it is what it is, and that's pretty awesome. So when you follow it up with cheaply made, a villain battle that doesn't really come across as a villain, I mean, you know, as a true battle of wits, then it, you know, it still has to compare to the first one, and it just doesn't. Like, there's in no stretch other than like the kills are like more gruesome, and they're fairly inventive. I mean, he sandblasts the guy to death. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, they're inventive. Like, I love the robot snakes, and then it's like the Psych Out, where it's like, oh, okay, I got it now. They're all robot snakes, and then the one real snake bites the guy. That's kind of funny, even though you totally see it coming, but still.
There aren't that many. There's the robot snakes. There's a chair. They catch a guy in a big scorpion chair and then sting him with scorpions.
And
I mean, that is the one, like, Volnavia does a lot more
There's
of that.
the guy that gets the goriest death is the guy that gets scraped to death by the falcon.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. That's right. No, that's horrible.
There's the guy in the bottle that they throw overboard.
Yes.
The guy gets crushed. And they're like, well, at least we give his head a burial.
I hated that one so much. That was awful. It was stupid, too, by the way. How does he get crushed? Like, he's in a sleeping bag, and then, okay. First of all, where is Phibes getting this machinery to, like, this hydraulic press that he's going to attach to this guy's tent from 4 sides and then crush him in his sleeping bag, and the guy could have just stood up
and
stepped over it.
No, he was tied down. They do a shot where they showed him tied down.
Oh, they showed him getting tied down? Okay, I missed that part.
I like Vincent Price's.
And how did he do all that without waking the dude up? Did they drug him?
He was really sleepy.
Yeah, good.
Besides, he does wake up just in time to get crushed into man paste.
I like Vincent Price's look of glee though when he's like cranking the thing. And I mean, I will have to say that the scorpion death, where the guy gets lured by Volnavia, which she does a lot of seduction in this one. Gets lured by Volnavia, or sort of Volnavia, since it's a different actress, and they don't ever give her any kind of mod clothing at all. They totally changed her. Like,
it's not as cool.
She's in Egypt, whatever. But she lures this dude. He sits down in the scorpion chair, which, why wouldn't you trust the strange woman and sit in a golden scorpion chair, I guess? And they close him down and lock him in, with nails, basically.
That was pretty horrific.
And then give him the key, and when he's like, oh, I need to break that out so I can get the key, he's begging Phibes to let him out.
Well, they dropped the key, into this, like Dalmatian piggy bank.
Yeah. And he opens it, and their scorpions all, pour out and start stinging him. They crawl on his pants and sting him. They crawl all over. That was really gruesome. I mean, I was...
That's horrific. The sandblasting thing, which is stupid, but also kind of a little bit horrific.
That doesn't get that gruesome, though, because, I mean, I was like, sand, I guess it's like the hail thing, but then they show him, and he's,
But
sandblasted.
again, couldn't the guy just have jumped out of the car? I mean, he starts getting hit with the sand. Don't you think the thing you do is leap out of the car, not just sit there and be completely...
It was really powerful sand.
My problem with the murders in this one is in the first one, they're the whole thing is like he's been meticulously, ritualistically planning this out for some time. Here, I guess we can assume he's got all these devices in his Phibes lair, but he just sort of whips up these very elaborate murders.
And they're kind of like just people who are with. I mean, they're people who are with the guy. They're not really like. I guess we're supposed to believe they have their own things, but it's not the same. You're totally right. That's part of the problem I had too. Like, he's getting revenge, and it makes sense, right? In the first one.
Yeah.
This one, it's like, hey, you're around my enemy. Well, how about some crazy deaths? Here you go. You shouldn't have been around him. Now you get sandblasted.
Yeah, it's like guilt by association. It sort of throws out. And at the same time, because they are so underdeveloped, I mean, no matter what, you root for Phibes because the characters are so underdeveloped, you don't care whether they live or die anyway.
I wish they would have killed the cops, though, man. They're so...
Hey, what's the deal with him? Why does he have to eat out of the side of his neck? I don't understand.
Because his mouth is whatever burnt his face off, his mouth has kind of been fused shut.
Yeah, but it seems like you still have to, like, what did he create? Some kind of...
Yeah, one can assume that
whatever
there's
you
some
call it,
kind
what do
of
you call that?
just
Like
entry into his esophagus, but that's all grotesque. And also,
for shock value, it's
for one
really
thing, it's grotesque, but for another, it's totally jokey. It's annoying.
Well, that's in the first movie, though.
It is.
That is true.
It absolutely is. No,
Like that's
right.
something they made up for this, and but that's the thing. The first movie has some jokiness to it. I actually feel like this movie's a lot more. Like I said, I almost feel like it's a parody because like it again, and I just have to wonder it's because they didn't have time to really work on the script. They were just like, well, let's do the
tell me more
Batman
about that,
66 version.
Is that true? Yeah, because you said that, and I'm not doubting you, but I mean, have you read anything about that? Because I don't know.
I have read about that because American International did not expect the first Dr. Phibes to be a hit. So when it was, they were like, "Oh, we better get hopping on a sequel on this pronto." And this is what you get.
So many terrible movies come out just because of that. What do you got?
But that's really more like how American International operated. I mean, we just talked about this last week about how it's kind of accidental that the first one is so classy. And
I know.
That's absolutely right.
But
yeah,
I mean, the world of Hollywood is littered with these stories of like, yeah, just go do what you want. We don't care. And then somebody makes something sort of clever that ends up doing well, and they rush the second one out because why not kill the golden goose every freaking time? And we have this other guy. The other guy's busy, so we'll get these screenwriters. Well, we don't care. Just have it out in a month or whatever. And
in fairness, this was basically the same creative team as the first movie. I just don't think they have the time. I don't think they have the time to really put
Imagine, think if imagine if we started with Volnavia. If the whole point is Volnavia, like we show her somehow alive, and we get and then she has to go like wake up Phibes. If we could do it all from like somebody else's perspective. I'm still just really torn by the fact that when you start watching this movie and the first 10 minutes of it have no dialogue, only narration, that you're in trouble. I mean,
holy geez, how awesome would it have been if Volnavia's disfigured, so she's a new sort of Phibes. He repairs her in the same way, so now they're even more bonded. Like something clever.
If she actually declared her allegiance if she betrayed Phibes because she wants the river of life for herself, I would have been, down with that. Well,
now it's the Volnavia show, and we're running into a completely different set of problems.
Well, I'm just saying that there's many things you could, I mean, there's a lot that you could have done. And there's so much more you could have done where you just showed things instead of, it does feel like the comics that you're talking about where you'll see, especially a lot of horror comics, from the era where there were a lot of, house history and stuff like that. There tends to be a lot of, and I was so scared. Look, and there's some look of fright, or I'll smash this thing as they're smashing a thing. Like,
luckily I've hidden this thing. Luckily I've hidden this wine bottle in the trunk of my car, so I'm getting it now. Yeah, no, I agree completely.
Well, my problem with giving Phibes so much dialogue in this, and I kind of wonder if some of that was done in post because it doesn't. They have him definitely talking when he's not plugged in. So I think that might have been like kind of like, oh well, we need to have Price talking more, but.
You think there's studio meddling going on?
Yeah, it just because most of the movie in the original film, Vincent Price is acting mostly with his face and not that really expressive voice that he had. When he does talk, it's so much more ominous and creepy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the feeling I'm left with this. And, I never really thought about it in those terms until watching them so close to each other.
Yeah, although, one thing this did give us that I realized not until I'd seen it again was his poetry and his ending laugh as he goes down, the river. This movie is actually, more than anything, the prototype for what we got when he did stuff for Thriller. He does a really similar poetry kind of reading, and it has the almost exact same laugh that he does at the end of Thriller. And I was really like, wow, like this movie is kind of where that came from. Like, not the first one, not, of course, they wanted Vincent Price, but how that turned out, and it came pretty much from this movie. And I thought that was really kind of like interesting. Like, I never thought about that.
I just love the fact that he's a horror movie villain. Admittedly, there's only the 2 movies, but that he always wins. Like, that's in the Phibes universe. Sure. You can the best you can hope is you can save your loved one. But you better stay out of his way. Like,
Cobra Commander and Skeletor take note.
Yes.
No, but the example I was thinking of, though, so I think, Drew, that's a brilliant thought, and you're exactly right that it seems to be in this movie that the best you can hope for is you get out with the life of your loved one or yourself, like Vesavius did in the last movie. And Robert Corey doesn't make it because he's playing the big game against Phibes. But if this had been 3 movies, I'm sure he would have lost in the end. And the reason I think of it is like Damien. Remember, Damien makes it, just killing people left and right for 3 movies before he finally loses at the end of the third Omen picture. And you're worried that he's going to just simply take over the entire world. And those movies are every bit as cheesy as this, although if I have to set them side by side, even though people hate the Omen series, it looks really good. I think
I would rather watch this any day of the week than any of the Omen sequels.
Seriously?
The Omen 2 and the Omen 3 are awful.
Omen 3, I like Omen 3.
Awful films.
They're awful, but this movie isn't getting much play in.
I remember liking the Omen sequels, but maybe I'm wrong.
I love the Omen, the original, singular. Anything that came after that. No.
Well, if any of our listeners are curious
a guy
about
getting
this,
shredded by a falcon.
No, that's true. But remember, Omen 3 had that hilarious thing where for some reason this guy, through an elaborate thing like buckets falling off of ladders and
I don't know that we can hang out anymore. No. This is a flawed movie.
He gets lifted into the air, and then he's like thrown through all these cellophane filters for the lights, and then he's swinging back and forth and catches fire.
Not forgivable. Can't sanction that shit. Sorry.
The fellowship is broken through the 5 sequel.
But you can hear.
I'm going to go become the abominable Dr. Edwards and take revenge on anybody who made the Omen 3.
I think we already had the fellowship broken last. Tony, I think we had the fellowship broken last week over the whole Steely Dan conversation.
Oh yeah.
No, I expected to be alone about that.
Well, the spin-off podcast where Jason slowly quits his duties on this one and goes for the Steely Dan.
Yeah. All right.
True
Is there
companions,
anything
one and
else
all.
that we should discuss here? I know that we've been going for about an hour, so we can go ahead and wrap up, unless there's another topic that we feel like I'm not missing. But to be honest with you,
if I may be shallow a moment, that actress is way too good looking for Robert Quarry.
What? No. Robert Quarry is cute. He's really a jelly handsome guy.
Well, there we go. The female perspective. All right.
Yeah.
There we go.
I actually said that during the movie. I'm like, he is really handsome.
I mean, clearly somebody enjoyed Robert Quarry. The men who watch it, I think a lot of times are like, I don't see what it is about this guy, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I hope somewhere, some woman or girl has had to have written Robert Quarry fan fiction. See, the problem is that all of these movies took place before the internet.
Yeah.
People have.
Yeah. You'd have to.
I want to acquire the comic book rights to both Phibes and Yorga just so I can write the Phibes Yorga comic book.
Oh man, yes.
I
would love, when you're talking about the prequel novel, I would love. See, that's the thing is, again, seeing what the potential is for like these supervillains. If he was, more villainous, man, that's fantastic. I want that, and maybe that's again why I'm so disappointed and disillusioned by this, because it says it's going to deliver this thing, and it in no shape, form, or fashion, other than some kind of cool, crazy kills, delivers any of that. At all.
Robert Kari's character's problem isn't that he loves, because love is an empowering thing in this universe, because that's what Phibes is driven by.
No, see, that's what
he's too mushy. He's too mushy. If he just was completely hell bent on whatever, I think.
But I don't think he loves that.
Success.
He's a jerk. I think that's the weird part. Is Phibes loves his wife. He's more or less a supervillain because of his wife.
Well, he reminds me a lot of the Mr. Freeze on Batman the Animated Series.
Very much so.
Yes.
Very, very much so. Crazy. Yeah, that's a really great point. But remember though that in the world of this movie though, so yes, he's motivated to bring his wife back to life and to give her eternal life for both of them and so forth. But he still supposedly has been chasing eternal life against Bieterbeck for many, many chapters. And in fact, in theory, that's the story of Phibes' life, is I'm chasing eternal life against my rival Bieterbeck. And in the last couple of years, we've had this problem where I was in a car accident and my wife was killed. But
I think that's part of the tragedy too. If you want to go with that, is that he most likely wanted he wants eternal life for both he and his wife, right?
Yeah.
Like he's got the best thing going. She's awesome. She supports his supervillainness or whatever, whatever she does. And why not have that forever? And so when she's killed in a car wreck before he can attain that, then that starts a whole other supervillain thing.
One of the scripts for the sequel that they were planning to do to this movie, she's actually able to come back to life, but she's like this horrific psychopathic homicidal.
Yeah, the idea was that she was going to be worse than him.
Yeah.
See, that's awesome. I would totally and what a cool surprise! That would.
Because I guess he's pumping her with whatever that quote-unquote embalming fluid is, which obviously wasn't
the
abominable Mrs. Phibes.
Yes.
Yep.
This fluid that it's not really embalming fluid, we find out. It's actually a special concoction he calls embalming fluid, but it's actually this semi-magical sustaining fluid. He's Reed Richards. He can make anything. Oh, get this. Would you believe that Robert Corey actually lived in the home of Joseph Cotton, who was, of course, the good guy in the last in the last film? I just find that really strange. The notion of Joseph Cotton for years having Robert Corey as his young house guest, dating Cotton's daughter and stuff like that. It's really odd when you find out about these relationships. That
is bizarre.
It is.
Who do you think would win if between Phibes and Yorga?
Oh, Phibes and Yorga. Wow, good question. Wow, there's your fanfic right there, man.
So who do you think would win? I want to take a show of hands.
I think maybe Yorga, since he's immortal. I think it's actually, again, not to be too much a cop. I think it's a stalemate kind of thing, where I think Yorga's so he's immortal anyway.
Yeah.
So I think he wouldn't care if bad things happen because he's going to come back. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but the thing is, I think that Phibes could somehow trap him for like 1,000 years.
Sure,
so
and I think maybe that I think it just would end up in more of a stalemate kind of thing because Yorga can outlast him. Like he doesn't have to. Now that maybe that's the deal. Like now that he's immortal by the end of the movie, then we've got a whole new thing. See, I want the rights again. Like I would love to help co-write this because it would be awesome.
You guys should just write it and then play with it from there. I knew a guy who actually just wrote he wrote a Buckaroo Banzai script just for the hell of it, and actually ended up selling it, even though he didn't even have the rights to it.
Oh yeah, right.
So it can be done, my friends. That's if you want to write a Yorga script, write it. If it's good enough, somebody out there will figure that stuff out. That's the truth. I think that Phibes would probably win because Yorga doesn't ever have to rely on his cleverness the way that Phibes does.
Yeah, see, now that you mention it, I think that Yorga has a certain amount of hubris that might be his downfall because, I think he would be very dismissive of even Phibes is smart, but he's a human.
Yeah, and I think Phibes would be an excellent vampire slayer. I gotta say, he could come up with
he would come up with some awesome ways to kill vampires.
It'd be cool to have a good guy have to team up with Phibes and have to keep him sort of in line. A Terminator 2 style thing where you have somebody with a conscience who's like, okay, I'm teaming up with Phibes to take down Count Yorga, but please, Phibes, you have to promise me that you will stop killing people at least for the next 90 minutes of screen time. Because I think it's more like it's a caught in the middle. Like you have to write that character really well, because you're always kind of going to be rooting for Phibes. Yeah, I think it's more of like if he has to team up with him at all, it would be very tenuous. But I think it would work better if he's caught in the middle between this and has to figure out what he's going to do to kill both of them or to pit each, to push the rivalry / whatever to really get them at each other's throat. I think that would be. You'd also have to figure out what is the rivalry. But I challenge you. I think that sounds fantastic. What a great thing that would be. Hell, you could write it, and then if you were really happy with it, you just put it out and just change the names of the people, and then in every interview, do you go, well, this is actually Phibes versus Yorga, but wink.
Well, it's no Fire Shark, but
yeah.
I'm waiting for Fire Shark.
I think that's a fantastic idea. All right, we should get our final thought. Now that we're pitching movies to one another, we should get our final thought.
Yeah.
And
you're kidding? Everybody's going to love the fact that we had a prolonged conversation about Phibes versus Yorga. No one's gonna go like, man, I wish they would not have talked about Dr. Phibes versus Count Yorga. That just bored me. People love that. I know our audience because I am our audience.
Oh, you listen to us every week? You're the one?
There's another problem, by the way, in the fact that Phibes, the Phibes movies are 50 years before the Yorga. Not that matters in the slightest. I'm just saying.
Yorga's immortal. He can be he can be at any time.
Yeah,
the fact he exists in the 70s has nothing to do with.
Yeah, and Phibes is now immortal at the end of this movie because he won.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
And at least let us not forget that one of the proposed sequel ideas was going to have him fighting Nazis in the 40s. So I think they could have. Hey, Count Yorga as a Nazi. There you go. Better than a vampire, a Nazi vampire.
Yes,
that would actually work just fine. Yeah, you could do. You could easily use one of the stories like the Keep or I'm trying to remember the name.
Well, also that plays into Hitler's fascination with the occult. Why wouldn't you, if approached, have a vampire on your staff if you're super into the occult?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. You can imagine a story where Count Yorga is in, God knows where, Egypt with the Nazis because he's consulting with them. That jackwad who's always on Indiana Jones's trail in those movies.
Oh yeah, Belloc.
Yeah, exactly. He could be Belloc, basically. Easily. Yes.
Oh, man.
Writes itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want this. Like, I want the dimension where this exists. That would be awesome.
You know, you could also do it as a game. I think it. Well, okay, all right. God. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm talking to myself at this point. Julia, final thoughts. Dr. Phibes rises again.
Well, you know, I mean, I think it's still the same as it was at the beginning, is now and ever shall be. I don't see the point of this particular movie existing.
All right.
That's pretty much all I have.
Okay, very good. All right, so Drew, rushed, you said. Any other thoughts about
the point? The point you say. The point is that Vincent Price is awesome, and Dr. Phibes always wins, and that is enough for me. I still
and
enjoy
Cal Yorga is awesome.
Cal Yorga is awesome, but I don't know if he is as awesome as Dr. Phibes. And shallowly, I will point out again, the redhead in this movie is very, very good looking. I very seldomly go there on this podcast. I'm going there this time. Thank you.
I don't even think good looking is going there. I think that's a perfectly valid point. I mean,
I am very tame in my perversion, I suppose.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Okay, Tony, final thoughts. Dr. Phibes rises again, and I'm curious. Do you recommend people watch this movie? Go ahead, continue.
No, I don't. I personally wish I had just the memory of Dr. Phibes Part 1, because that's an awesome movie. For any faults that it has, it's really cool. And this, I think, is definitely this will always be an Exorcist to Phibes' Exorcist. I do not like this film. I think, again, it has some good kills. I think it's weird in tone because they're so strangely mean-spirited. They're definitely more gruesome in a way.
Well, there's no reason. He's not hiding behind.
Well, they're just gruesome
passion.
in general, and it's cool. I mean, it's a horror movie, right? We like horror movies. I'd have no problem with them being gruesome. It's just strange. It's such a weird tone, and it's so also, again, it's so much tell for so little show, and that's just a cardinal sin of movie making. It is a shame, when Drew was saying well, it's the same team. That makes me kind of sad because it's I don't know. Maybe I just wanted more because I really, really liked the first one so much, and this one just. I was kind of bored. I hated the police guys. I just think in general it kind of falls flat, and that's a shame because I also like Yorga a lot. So it's this should be a Reese's peanut butter cup, and instead it's more like toothpaste and orange juice.
Brilliant.
So I don't know. It didn't work for me, unfortunately.
But it doesn't take away from the first. I mean, I firmly believe. You hear people say bullshit that second movie ruined the first one for me. It was
that's BS. I said, I have a flipper disc. I just never have to flip it to the second side.
Exactly.
That's fine. It doesn't destroy the other side,
Right. No, you'll hear people say, "Oh, I can't watch the Saint. I can't read the Saint anymore because that movie with Val Kilmer ruined it for me." I was well, what kind of your brain is made of cottage cheese if something can be ruined because somebody else did a bad version of it. That's crazy.
I had to wait years for a good Dredd movie, but that didn't make the comics suck. In fact, it made me want to read the comics more because then I could try to forget.
I know it sounds like a straw man, but I do hear this all the time.
No, I know. Well, it's the echo chamber of the internet, especially. So
yeah, no, absolutely. It's right up there with people saying that their childhood is ruined by a reboot or something.
Yeah, suck it up, Buttercup. It's not ruined your childhood. It sucks. I mean, in that same vein, I don't have the same affection I did for Star Wars, for example, as a franchise. And that sometimes makes me a little sad because I really want to like it more than I do because it used to be a huge part of my childhood. Huge.
Yeah.
I mean, just there was none other, you know?
Yeah.
And so it is weird that I just don't have that same affection. And I want to, and I feel kind of jealous of people who still have that Star Wars is my jam kind of thing. And I feel a little guilty that it's not, because those are my nerd brethren and sisters, you know. And so
there's many different ways to be a nerd.
You know, and I understand, like I know where that's coming from, but that's crazy hyperbole. It ruined my childhood. No, you had a childhood. Like that was fine. You know, you don't have to like this new thing.
My endorsement is going to be about that. In fact, that's going to be the endorsement. But when you think about like Star Trek fans are big Star Trek fans, even when they're happy to acknowledge that the first movie was boring and the fifth movie was also kind of boring. They just have no problem saying James Bond fans are James Bond fans and have no problem saying any movie where James Bond goes to the United States is not a very good movie. Just unfortunately, that's the case. If Bond is headed for Hollywood or for Silicon Valley or for Las Vegas, forget about it. You can just take that one off.
Awesome.
So I think you could still count yourself a Star Wars fan, even if you go, I don't watch the new ones. That's just
yeah. Well, I mean, the enthusiasm. I guess the enthusiasm that I see friends of mine have still, like I said, makes me a little jealous and a little sad. But it doesn't. It's fine.
No, I know exactly.
It's okay. It didn't. Like I said, it didn't ruin my childhood. I still love the art, and I still love a Star Wars Xbox. I'm like, that's cool. The only thing I wish is that if it Red Ring of Death, it made the dying R2 sound. I mean, that's a little too self-aware, but like stuff like that. Like, I don't know, people they're really adamant about things and really thin-skinned about others. That's just strange. It's just part of our weird internet culture.
It's a really good point. I'm always shocked actually at stuff that people will go off on. I've always referred to it, and I try
as we go off on things on a podcast.
Well, absolutely, but I try not to read internet comments, but occasionally there's a kind of commenter that I didn't coin this phrase, but we call them the poisoned, which is the person who's read the entire article, but they're stuck on some random thing because you mentioned, with all the debating power of Henry Kissinger, and this person hates Henry Kissinger, and so they're going to now give you 1,000 words on why people need to remember that Henry Kissinger was a very bad man, and you're like, at this point, 50 years later, can we please stop arguing about the Secretary of State? But
some of us can't. Okay.
Right.
We can't even stop arguing about like the Holocaust and who is Hitler and who's not Hitler.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. No, you're right. But I don't want to stop arguing about the Holocaust. That's the one. That's the one that would leave there and go.
That was yours.
Oh man, that's the one. Example. Interesting.
But what the one you don't want to do is you don't want anybody to go so far as to reference the Holocaust. But Holocaust, yes, still bad.
No, but I'm saying that every issue is the Holocaust. Everything.
Right.
Like
exactly.
I don't like the kind of pizza that you like, so therefore you're Hitler. I don't know.
That's called Godwin's law. There's actually a word for that. It's Godwin's, and it's the law that said that basically the longer an argument on the internet goes, the likelihood of somebody referencing the Holocaust or Hitler.
Yep, definitely a phenomenon.
I think there should be Yorga's law.
Ooh,
the longer you talk
with
about
Yorga's law.
Wait,
the longer you talk about something, eventually somebody will bring up Count Yorga. I don't know. I'm making it full circle.
If only that was it instead
full
of Hitler.
Circle.
Well, we all have favorites.
Let's push for Jordan's Law. I don't know how we're going to make this happen on the internet, but now I want that.
I know I have pop culture that I reference. Like, the longer I'm talking about something, the sooner I'll reference, one thing or another that I really love. It used to be Roman Polanski's Macbeth, so suddenly that would just like pop into my discussion of literally anything, which got complicated when it was like comedies like The Odd Couple or something. Now I don't
when
know.
I'm talking Scooby-Doo, it became increasingly hard to reference Macbeth, but then I did anyway. So.
Yeah. Well, you can always pull it off by going, this itself is not like Roman Polanski's Macbeth, and yet I enjoy it in similar ways.
Oh, man.
Right now, my brain is itching for me to make pop culture references that I know I overdo. So I'm like...
You could always do it during your final thoughts.
Right.
Yeah.
My only final thought is this, and that is that, again, I'm frustrated by the fact that this movie didn't do it for me. But then again, I love a lot of AIP movies, and some of them are not very good. And this is better than a lot of really bad AIP movies. So, it's been interesting to watch the entire retrospective, but this is a pale, pale shadow to the pretty memorable first film. So we should do endorsements. Let's go around the same way again. Julia, do you have anything to endorse for us this week?
Lenny Kravitz.
Lenny Kravitz from the Super Bowl.
Well, Lenny Kravitz
show.
from being Lenny Kravitz, but yes, I'm endorsing him because it's the Super Bowl halftime show.
Did you see this? You saw the halftime show, right?
Yeah, he was he was just barely on for like just a few minutes, but he's just as great as he was 25 years ago and has been ever since.
Yeah, he played during I Kissed a Girl. And that was before my favorite part, which was where Katy Perry was dancing with walking sharks.
With the sharks, yeah.
I saw that post. I watched Whiplash, and then I went over to a friend's house afterwards and watched The Black Hole. And that was my evening. And then everybody talking about stuff. And it wasn't even like, the Super Bowl is like this plan. It just happened that way. Even though I don't really watch the Super Bowl usually, but like it wasn't, aggro or anything. And then I came home, and there's memes and references, and there was some bummer ad I guess I have to watch about some kid.
Oh, God, the bummer ad was horrible.
And then, so I have all this stuff where people are like the next day like, oh, haha, this and that. And I'm like, I posted, it was like I'm like the RCA dog. Like I'm kind of looking askance. I know things happened, and there's like an animated GIF with some sharks, and that's kind of funny. But I have some catching up to do, I guess, in pop culture today.
Well, I mean, I watched the halftime show after. I mean, I went skiing. I like to go skiing on Super Bowl Sunday because it's always empty, And so I just caught the halftime show after I got back, and
interesting.
Julia's playing the commercials for me. So, all right, Julia, that was Lenny Kravitz. Drew, any endorsements for us this week?
Well, what I was doing during the Super Bowl, and speaking of things that come from the 90s, I have recently rediscovered my love for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which is all on on Netflix right now, and we watched season 1 while the Super Bowl was on, and it's funny looking back because I haven't seen these in going on a decade, and I really love the show when it was on. It's funny. I never thought about the 90s having an aesthetic until I see it so clearly, and about how I clung on to certain aspects of that aesthetic longer than I probably should have, because when up until a couple of years ago, I still had like platinum blonde hair, and in fact, when one of Jamie's friends, when we first met, didn't want her to date me because she thought I was a vampire. And the moment Spike showed up, Jamie started cracking up.
That's awesome.
She was like, he looks like somebody, but I can't quite put my finger on it.
I remember the platinum hair. I thought that was really great, Drew.
I missed my platinum hair personally, and it's funny because I looked like that contemporary of the character. I'm sure if I were to do that now, somebody would think I was cosplaying. But
I don't think so. I think if you did it now, I mean, truly, I do not associate platinum hair with the 90s. But then again, I stopped paying attention to fashion.
Well, that's the thing. Like, the funny thing about Spike as a character is that he's supposed to be this sort of retrograde 70s punk, but at the same time, he sort of exemplifies 90s love affair with all things punk.
I just love Spike. I love Spike. I think he reminds me he's supposed to be Billy Idol.
Yeah, he's totally supposed to be Billy Idol, which is the exact same guy that I cribbed that from.
Sadly, Marsher's band is not very punk. They're okay. They're good at what they do, but I wish.
Isn't it a rockabilly band? That's what I heard.
No. It's no. I don't know how to describe it. Like, he has a talented band and they're good at what they do. Not my.
Not your cup of tea.
And that's it's hard for a musician. Like, I'm a musician, and so I don't. It doesn't do me. I'm not gonna case on the dude. I saw him at Dragon Con, and I was like, hey, this is good for what it is. I get it. That's cool. But I wish they were more. I wish they were more Billy Idol. Maybe
I think
that's
what you're saying is that you wish it was Spike's band, not James Marsters' band.
Kinda, I do, and that's not really fair. Like, that's not really fair.
I get it.
And he pulled a kind of crummy thing when he was here with his band last time at Comic-Con.
No kidding.
Yeah, he canceled, and they booked it, and then he canceled because he was like, I don't want to go to this club. And then ended up just playing the show at Comic-Con because his band couldn't show up or something. There's a whole long story, but in the end, it was kind of like, man, that's kind of not so cool, But he's all right, dude. Like, I met him at a con and stuff, and like I said, his music's like, his band is really, they're pretty good. They weren't the band I'd kind of hoped for, but that's not really fair. So what can I say?
Yeah, well. I have to say, like, outside of, aside from all the Spike talk, like, the show holds up very well writing-wise. Like, some of the acting, Sarah Michelle Gellar is actually pretty good out the door, and Anthony Stewart Head's pretty good out the door.
Anthony Stewart Head, I love Giles. I've always had such a crush on Giles.
But he's really cool.
The rest of them, David Boreanaz is terrible in the first season, but gets really good in the second.
He's good at what he's supposed to be, which is broody. He's supposed to be a broody vampire.
He's trying to be broody. He's wooden. Like, he's really
good.
good.
Hey, it worked for me, dude. That's all I got to say.
No, not.
You're not going to win this one, by the way.
I feel like what my point is like, now that I'm into the second season, like, it's suddenly everybody's up the it holds up. Like, if some of the and I really, I was talking about makeup effects just the other day on Facebook. There are some really great makeup effects on this show, and it's really kind of made me realize that's probably one of the last times we are going to see that many practical monsters on one show, and a lot of them are really great.
Well, I love those. I tell you what, my favorite season of Buffy, and I actually showed Sophia a few of these episodes the other day, our 13-year-old, is when Willow becomes bad, Dark Willow or whatever they call her, Black Willow. I don't know, Dark Willow. Anyway, she, God, that was such good stuff. I think I even talked about it on the podcast before, where she's after Tara is killed, and she goes completely nuts, and then Giles comes in with his badass magic that he picked up from a bunch of witches. It's so good. It's such a good show. No, I loved Angel, but I liked Spike more, and I liked Giles the most.
I think Whedon, obviously. I mean, if you read any interviews with him, Whedon has a lot of affection for Spike. I mean, he certainly has much more of an arc than a lot of the other. I mean, when you think about how the character is when he shows up and what that character ends up as, is that's a story arc. I mean, that's
is done really well. And I wasn't originally as much of a fan as some friends of mine were. I like the show a lot, but they were a lot more hardcore than me. But I really like Rain and I. We rewatched it not too long ago, and I definitely agree. Like, the arc is really, really good. It's really strong.
Well, I didn't. I was kind of dismissive of the show back when it was originally on for the first season and a half, because I was like, I like real horror movies. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and then some friends of mine was like, no, you got to really watch it. And then I went back and rewatched the first season on VHS because it was the 90s. But
absolutely,
once I got into it, I really got into it. And revisiting it has been a lot of fun. And if you haven't done it in a while, I highly recommend it because it's just such a fun show. And like I said, if you're just as a monster fan, just being able to see all the makeup effects done. I mean, even just the vampires, which are simple, they're so cool.
That first season, by the way, at that point in the 90s, the only money I had actually coming in with which to buy food was I was writing reviews of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and stuff like that, and for the internet, which was like a new thing, and so that, thank God they invented the internet, or I would not have been able to make any money at all. But I was reviewing Buffy, and I remember that first season it's a short season. It was just almost a test show. It was like a mid-season replacement. It was very short, and all the stories are standalone. There's very little story to story to story. The real soapiness comes in the next season. And when you think about Dark Willow, what Julia was just talking about, that's season 6. I mean, just think about that. That some of the coolness doesn't even come around until 6 seasons into that show.
Although the Master is a really cool vampire villain.
For sure.
Like when they later, honestly, it's like that character is more like what I would want out of when they do Dracula and things. Not necessarily his appearance, but the way he behaves is way more what I would want from
comedy. They decided to.
Yeah, and I always found that was one of the things. Even though it's a funny episode, I always have found slightly disappointing because the Master essentially is Dracula.
Yeah, I think that's the point. Like they did the Master that way. I mean, they did Dracula that way because they had the Master. Like, what are you going to do at that point?
They also need to do a Doctor Who crossover so the Master can meet the Master.
There you go.
Yes,
I'm down with
that. They wore very similar outfits, by the way. I mean, you remember the old Roger Delgado Master always wore those big, the sort of black tunic kind of evil
quasi Nazi, not quite.
Yeah, and the Master vampire wore the same stuff. So yeah, absolutely. I remember I was at DraculaCon back in '98. Jesus. Anyway, and I just realized how long ago that was, and there were lots of people that were wearing the Buffy makeup already. So now I'm very sad. Okay. Thank you, Drew. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is your endorsement for the week, and I think that's wonderful. Tony, any endorsements?
I will endorse, and I hate that I have to say this again, but I just started working at Rooster Teeth, a couple months ago.
Rooster Teeth is what
and they do Red versus Blue is one of their most popular. There's also things like Achievement Hunter, several other things, and then a prototype. What started as kind of a prototype of a all CG anime style show called RWBY, RWBY. The creator of that show, who I met briefly since I started there, was a really, really cool guy. Monty passed away this week through just a super random thing, like a medical thing that just happened. And, I didn't know him nearly as much as I'd hoped. I mean, I'd seen the show. I liked it. He was a super hard-working guy. He was always in the mocap suit. Even the show wasn't coming back yet. There were plans, but he's doing stuff to push his show, to push the envelope, to make things better. He did a ton of work on Red vs. Blue Season 10. There's these crazy fights. I mean, he lived and breathed all the anime and kung fu movie stuff. That's what we talked about when we talked. That I loved, and he was young. He was 33, 34, and it's been really weird. Just I didn't know him as well as people there. I endorsed watching RWBY and creating things because that's what he would have wanted. In fact, they quoted it saying, instead of flowers or whatever, go out and create something. Like that's the memorial he would want. And again, I go back to what I said before. Like, again, this hits home. I guess I'm at the age, or we're at the age where, more people start to go.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of sobering. And I say, go hang out with your friends if you can. Hug the people that you can now. This was very unexpected and very sobering that this could happen just like this. I mean, I saw the dude. They did a commentary, and he was in, and he was, just in a mocap suit the other day. Like, oh man, I should talk more to Monty. Oh, he's busy, and I'll never get that chance, And it's the same with other friends of mine who, and I'm sure everybody's kind of felt some of that once you reach a certain time. And so I say, watch Ruby, watch the stuff he had, but also be inspired by that kind of thing. Even if you're an anime purist and that wasn't your thing, like the fact this guy loved this thing he did so much that he made the thing he wanted to make and pushed it through and got that made and put in the work. Like, do that, write the novel that you want to write, or the short story, or the webcomic, or the start sculpting, whatever you think, like, I don't know if I can do that. And I'm a bad procrastinator, so I can't say, oh yeah, I'll just do all this, because I have tons of things I haven't done. But it's weighed heavily on me that's what we have to do if that's what you want to do. And he was such a great guy. Like, meet the people you can. Like, hug them, talk to them. Whatever you can do to hold on to that. And flip side, try to be a cool person too. That's, I don't know. It's my kind of rambling endorsement.
No, but I thought that was really beautiful. I found it.
So that's what I'm sticking to. Create something good. Bring something cool to the world if you can.
That's wonderful, Tony.
Do that. I don't know. Yeah. It's far. This year has taught me that things are far shorter than we can possibly imagine. So not all of us can be immortal like Dr. Phibes and have an extensive revenge plan. So barring being a supervillain, which I don't endorse. Do your
revenge now while you still can.
Exactly. I don't endorse being a supervillain, but I do endorse being perhaps as creative as Phibes in a much more positive way if you can do that. How about that?
Yeah.
What is that meme that was going around the internet? Always be yourself and let's be Batman. We should create one of our own. Always be yourself unless you can be Dr. Phibes.
Yeah, exactly. Or Cal Yorga, I suppose, right? That's our discussion.
Yeah, that's true.
Cool.
I think I'd rather be Yorga. He still has a face.
Yeah, he does have a harem. He has many Volnavius at his disposal or whatever.
So Yorga may win in that respect. In the having face contest, he definitely wins.
Right. And by the way, I do hope Monty would approve of turning the conversation back to supervillains and vampires.
Yes. But Tony, so if I understand it, your endorsement then really is you're endorsing go create more art this week.
Yeah,
this week
and
is an opportunity to make
be with
art.
your friends, and of course, like I said, Monty's legacy is Ruby, which just is on Netflix. So, check out what a person can do. He pushed that through. He it's his baby. Yeah. He did the stuff for it to make it happen. Like, that's inspirational to me. On a personal level, as well as just getting to meet this really talented guy. Who's happened to work with a lot of the talented people I work with now. Like I work with a bunch of the animators who worked on that, and the people. I'm working on the animation pipeline. I'm kind of the behind the scenes tech person. One of those. I'm on the tech team, but I work with a bunch of animators who worked on that, and it's also a testament that when you see the community, which, by the way, the Rooster Teeth community has been freaking amazing. I'm blown away. I've only worked there a short time, and I'm really just like, wow, this is how people are. That's awesome, considering how the internet can be. You know, everybody, like, you can tell there's not people like, you know, well, we had our thing. It's universally, we miss this really awesome person in our life, and that's, you know, that's something. If something's going to happen, that's, I think, the best you can hope for is that's your legacy. That people go, man, that person was awesome, and that's, I think, you know, what we can hope to leave behind if things happen, you know.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, my endorsement is not nearly as beautiful as that or as inspiring, because I really take a great deal of inspiration from what you said. It is related to something we were talking about earlier, and at least not completely stupid, which is College Humor posted a wonderful video urging people to stop saying that ruined my childhood, and it was related to, you know, whenever. So you just go to college, or actually just search College Humor. It ruined my childhood is ruined. Those words will bring you to this video, because it was reposted like everywhere. But it just shows a bunch of 20-somethings sitting around a table at like a Chili's or whatever, and talking about all these various reboots and how childhood equals ruined. And occasionally they'll cut away to monologues from people, you know, like who lived under Pol Pot or his family were killed by the Khmer Rouge and stuff like that. You know, it's really wonderful. You know, because you have to realize that sometimes we way overthink, you know, some of these things, and certainly over personalize what is essentially, you know, our
first world problems.
Yeah, definitely first world problems. Which interestingly is a meme, you know, that it's kind of interesting to me that it's only popped up in the last couple of years, where we started saying that, and it's not wrong. I'm happy we are, but that sort of bears some study to figure out.
Yeah, I actually hashtagged that just today with somebody who was talking about their heater wasn't working efficiently.
Yes. Yeah. No. Yeah. So, gosh, this has been a wonderful discussion over a movie that none of us really cared for that much. So that's fantastic.
I think that's par for the. I think we've had enough episodes where I think the framing argument and the roundabout is the actual podcast, and that's fine.
Yeah.
There's no shame in my game about that.
Right. Okay, well, fantastic. Everybody, thank you so much. If we've gotten some more great reviews recently on iTunes, but let me tell you, we always need more. If you have listened to the show and you haven't left a review, go to iTunes, rate us, leave a review. It'll help people find the show. Come to our Facebook page, leave comments, argue with us, bring up alternate theories that we may not have thought of, and we will totally respond, because we love it. And those of you joining us from Bleeding Cool, thank you, and welcome back for the new season. We will be back next week. I don't even remember what comes next week, so I guess it will be a surprise to me as well as you. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Night.